Today we have a really great time to introduce. I want to introduce you to two really great friends of mine who are doing some really interesting entrepreneurship work in three different sectors, really. And on the far left is Gabe Coyne. Gabe grew up in Seattle and built multiple companies in Seattle based around web marketing and some gamification and just some really great companies. He eventually moved to Chicago, where he started multiple companies. One is Sticks Golf, and the other one is Host Modern. We'll get into that a little bit, what those are. And the co-founder of both of those companies on my left is Colin Duff. And Colin Duff, we've known each other almost 17 years. He was a former student of mine when I was a professor in the Pacific Northwest. And so it's just fun to see it come full circle. Now we're just good friends, seeing him raise a family and become an entrepreneur in his own right. And so he's started with Viator Coffee Company in a suburb of Chicago, which just went through its first acquisition as well. And he's doing some great work with Viator Coffee, but then he is the co-founder of Sticks Golf and Host Modern as well. So we thought we'd bring some Chicago flavor of entrepreneurship over to West Michigan and hopefully learn about their story. So please welcome Colin and Gabe. So Gabe, let me start with you. I mean, your full bio is in the program, and they can read all of the companies you've started. Tell us a little bit about what got the entrepreneurial bug. I mean, it sounds like you started fairly young, and it's just ongoing and growing. How did that start?
Entrepreneurship for me, I think, started one as a passion, as a problem solver, but two also as just a means for kind of uncapped earning potential. I had 4 kids in my early 20s, and a 9-to-5 as a single income, raising this family was quickly like, man, there's a lot of expenses here. How can I raise the ceiling on income? And that's what kind of started it. I was at a point where I was working a 9-to-5 at a design firm in the city in Seattle, and I was freelancing on the side. So I would work 2 hours in the morning doing freelance work. I'd take a bus for an hour into the city. I'd work my 9-to-5. I'd take a bus an hour home. So by the end of this 12-hour day, I was making half my money in the 2 hours and the other half in my 10 hours. And I got to a point where I was like, I need to make the jump. I need to make the switch. Do I believe in myself, or do I believe in this employer more for my future? And so, the day came where I made the leap, and I've never looked back. I ran a creative studio in Seattle for about a decade after making the initial leap. And as I tell my kids, if you do your best work every time, doors always open. And so as I was running my creative studio, I got recruited by one of my clients to co-found a company with him. That was in 2012, and we built what is called Influence Mobile, which is the 3rd top mobile advertising platform in the world, only behind Google and Facebook, for delivering high-value users to mobile app developers. We'll get into this more, but got bored with that. I basically, I love to build stuff, but once it's kind of built and now it's just operating it, I'm no longer excited. So I went and joined a venture studio when I moved to Chicago, worked with early stage entrepreneurs and Fortune 50 companies to help them build their product prototypes and get new concepts off the ground. And as I was doing that, I experienced a personal problem with buying golf clubs, which led me to build Sticks Golf to try to solve what was basically a bad shopping experience. And I was like, this needs to be different. We'll get into how this evolved, but started Sticks Golf. We've been running that now for
6 years.
Yeah. I think I saw 7 on my LinkedIn. I think it's been 7. Yeah. Ran into another personal problem that I wanted to solve. Started another company called Host Modern, which is now 2-ish years old. but it's that's kind of what sparked the entrepreneurial journey, and then you kind of get addicted to it, right? Like, especially if you have some success, you're like, man, I can see a problem, fix a problem, build a company, deliver a product, and it becomes a little addicting.
That's awesome. Colin, you had a little more circuitous route. Tell us about yours.
Yeah, very much so. So my background, my education doesn't really map onto my professional journey. If you were to look at my LinkedIn, my background is primarily pastoral studies, and I got a master's in systematic theology. That really was my passion and interest, and I was going to go get my PhD. But when that happened around 2017, my wife and I, we were going to have a baby, and that got put on pause. And within about a year, I found myself working in the faith and workspace at a nonprofit out in Chicago. That nonprofit focused on working with Christian business owners. It kind of had two prongs to its value prop. One was create business content to help do kind of education on go-to-market strategy, sales, hiring, kind of all of the facets of running a business. And then we facilitated advisory boards, like roundtables, almost for anybody that goes to a church that has small groups. It's kind of like small groups for business owners. So I ran that. And I basically had 2 years of business education by producing and watching the content. And I thought to myself, well, why not me? But I think at the heart of that was when I finished my master's degree and was considering going and getting a PhD, I had the gift of some advisors, academic advisors, who basically gave me a kind of damning estimation of the prospects of getting a job. And, for anybody who knows higher education right now, it's not the best place to work. And so they said, whatever you do, don't go into debt. And so what I did was, between working at the nonprofit and considering kind of this path to a PhD, I was like, why not business? Why not business as a mechanism to fund a future PhD? So that was really at the heart of it, which is not something graduating master's students ever hear. Like, go spend a couple of years building a business, and then if it's successful, either exit or cash flow, the thing that you actually really, really love to do. And so I started in 2018 with the coffee company. That gave me a ton of experience. By 2020, Gabe came to me. Gabe is also my brother-in-law, just so everybody knows. He came to me and said, I need help with this golf company, so I became a co-founder there. And then we worked 4 years together before he said, hey, what do you think of this? And so we kind of brainstormed about the Host Modern product. And having had some successes now, we were like, let's launch this, let's run the play. And then that's been a success so far. So academic route, business as a means to funding academics, and then really just falling in love with this aspect of where God has called me for now.
I love both the different ways in which you both arrived at the same place. Gabe, tell me a little bit about, you were in the digital space primarily, and then you moved into the physical space, kind of direct to consumer, but tangible goods, golf clubs, and then the Host Modern, warming dishes, and those things you're developing now. Tell us a little bit about that transition and why golf clubs to start.
Yeah, it doesn't make a lot of sense, right? It's like going from theology into entrepreneurialism. This is like going from software to golf clubs. People are like, what? Like, you went from design to software to golf clubs, now cookware. Like, what are you doing? If you were to draw the path, you'd want to take some transferable skills and move them along. I think at the heart, I'm a problem solver, right? And that was the core of this. I was working with a bunch of entrepreneurs and larger companies, and I'd always consulted, so I was always solving somebody else's problem, whether it was figuring out their brand, building their product, developing their go-to-market strategy. So I was always working on somebody else's product. So with golf, I was like, I know I can sell them, right? Like, I know I can build a brand, build demand, but physical goods was very different, and there was a lot to learn there. But that's a fun challenge. In entrepreneurship, I think it's important that you're always ready to learn, right? Like, nothing is going to stay the same very long. Even now with physical products and moving into a different physical product, so many things have changed since we started Sticks and what the world looks like, from shipping containers and tariffs and warehousing and 3PLs, and even what the advertising networks look like now. Like, it's always changing. So some things were transferable in the sense of, like, I at least knew how to build brands, products, market them. But yeah, physical products, they're nice in some ways. I mean, coming from software, you can build software, and that's cool. And then when you're stuck in like bug fixes and iterative releases, like that's not very fun. With physical products, like there's never bugs to fix. There's never scaling issues in the cloud. There's never deployment problems or data. What's the word I'm looking for? I want to say data warehouse. Whatever a server farm is called. Outages, right, that you got to deal with, but you got other problems. You got port congestions, and you got tariffs, and you got whatever. So, software to hard goods, lots to learn.
So you as co-founders, how did you find working together? I travel quite a bit, get to talk to a lot of business leaders and founders and entrepreneurs. And some like to call, I like to call it gas and brake pedals.
Yeah.
A lot of founders are gas pedal. They like to go, move fast.
Yeah.
I think you even said you like to move fast and pivot and change. That's what you like about entrepreneurship. But some people need to execute and deliver. How have you figured out how to work well together? Like gas pedal versus brake? Are you both that way? Or how does that work together between you two?
I think if anything, we both probably default to gas pedal. I mean, I think it got what sticks to where it needed to be. In terms of kind of an intensity and focus, and I think adaptability is probably the right word. Now, we launched this September of 2020. If anybody remembers 2020.
Perfect timing.
Yeah. But it also coincided with a huge boom in golf. Golf had never experienced the exponential growth that I don't think ever. It absolutely exploded. It was the first sport you could play. It was the first activity you could go out and do. The PGA show.
You developed it earlier, though, right?
Yeah,
and
we
you
did.
had to pause it.
And then we iced it, and then we felt like this was a good time to launch it. So I think it got us that kind of energy and drive and adaptability because of all the craziness at that time, helped us take market share. I mean, we beat competitors simply just because of speed. But then it became chaotic, and you can't have only gas pedal kind of people. And eventually, like a top that spins, it started to wobble. And we made some mistakes and eventually made a really good hire in our new CEO. Just so everybody knows, there was an evolution in the business. We brought in a professional CEO, which was awesome. His name's Brad. And that allowed Gabe and I to step back and focus on the areas that we really excel in. So currently in my profile, you'll see head of product. Gabe is chief brand officer. That's really where we excel. So we recognized we got to the business to a certain point because we work really well together. But then that was a weakness of ours, and we needed someone to bring some stability.
Yeah. You guys were talking earlier, though, about when you're all gas pedal and you were lean and mean, and then you got some consultation to come in and bring experts into the company, and that was a little uneven. Can you talk a little bit about when you tried to figure out running, like the ops side of things, whether it was fractional people coming in? How did you deal with scaling the company to the growth of where it's at now?
Yeah, I mean, we've had positive and negative experiences with experts, external advisors, but it's a friction, right? It's like when we're trying to go fast and then we're bringing in people to provide structure that don't have like decision-making power, but they're trying to implement kind of structural systems, and we're like, yeah, I hear you, but we want to keep going. That may have been part of the challenge, but I think when you're trying to build something disruptive, right? You're trying to disrupt a space like golf, that's very traditional, very old school, and you feel like you're making progress by approaching it a very different way, a different product approach, a different marketing approach, a different tone of voice, reaching a different customer. It seemed like a lot of the experts just kind of kept coming in and be like, why don't you be more like those guys? Why don't you be more like the ones that you're trying to disrupt? And it was like, that's not what we're trying to do. So that's been part of the challenge there.
For those that haven't looked at the website, maybe Colin, what is Sticks Golf? Where does it fit in the ecosystem?
Yeah, so the quick elevator pitch is that traditionally golf is dominated by one purchasing type. It's basically the industry tells you that you need more technology every single season. And in order to improve your game, you got to spend a ton of money, purchase clubs a la carte, get a fitting, have data from a launch monitor. It's kind of a wild industry. The alternative is a box set that you buy at Walmart or Target or Dick's Sporting Goods for a couple $100. So you're stuck between a $300 set and a $3,000 to $5,000 set. So what Sticks Golf is basically pioneered the premium package set. Package set in the golf space has traditionally been a dirty word. It's that $200 to $300 set. And what we set out to do is to basically get you 95% of the performance, cut all the noise and the marketing silliness, and get it to you at half the price. So anybody familiar with Casper Mattress or Warby Parker or Dollar Shave Club, it's effectively the same play. Not to diminish what we did, but we really went into an entrenched industry with one kind of shopping psychology, and we said, this is nonsense. We're gonna get you pretty much everything that matters, and we're gonna do it at $1,000 versus $3,000. And as soon as we launched that product with that value prop, we tell the story, we bought 100 sets to launch the business on your credit card. And we were like, if we sell a set a day for 100 days, there's something here. And I think it took us 12 to 14 days and they were all gone. And then we basically spent 18 months trying to catch up on the demand. So our pitch resonated. It was like, cut the silliness, cut the marketing mumbo jumbo, and let's get you really good product at a much better price. And it worked.
So there's a lot of students here. Thank you for all you professors who encourage your students to come. Thank you for all of you seasoned entrepreneurs and business leaders that are here. West Michigan is a hotbed of entrepreneurship in across the sector, but manufacturing and many other sectors. What would you say to a young person who is in business school or even not in, I mean, we had a fun talk earlier about education, and sometimes that can be a roadblock rather than encouragement to entrepreneurship. What would you say to young people wanting to start out, to think about their ideas, to think about running a business, starting? Is it contemplative? Is it iterative? Or should they just jump? What would be your advice to a young person?
Yeah, I'm always a fan of, jump in the deep end, learn how to swim, shoot, ready, aim. Like entrepreneurship is like having a kid. You're never prepared, right? Like you can read all the books you want, you can prep all you want, and when you have a child, everybody's caught off guard with how difficult it is, how challenging it is, how wonderful it is, and you just can't be prepared for it. So entrepreneurship, what I've said, and I said to you today is, and what I tell my kids, the most important thing you can learn is to learn, right? Because when you get on this path, you know nothing, right? Like, and it's constantly changing. And even when you wish you could hire somebody that knew everything or bring in an advisor that knows everything, it's never the case. You just have to go, right? Like, I don't know what the stats are around, like, how fear holds us back from so many things, but, like, you just got to do it. But I will say, learn to learn through failure, fail fast and learn, because, you jump in the deep end, that doesn't mean, like head down one road and stay that path forever, whether or not it's working. You got to get started. That's the leap. And then you got to learn and iterate as you go, constantly. Sticks Golf started as 12 clubs for $5.99 with no bag. Yeah. And today we have 6 different sets for 3 different player types, and women and kids. And we have a partnership with Jack Nicklaus, and we sell in retail and D2C and internationally. And we've tried and failed at a lot of different things, from digital marketing to influencer marketing to TV marketing. You're always learning. And the more comfortable you can get with just trying something and learning through failure, like that's how it's going to work. But if you're thinking about entrepreneurship, like, try something small, go from there.
I think, I don't know if this is going to speak to anybody, but my background being so foreign to actually what I do, I mean, there's obvious points of the transfer of skills, in the sense that I learned how to be a good reader and communicator and thinker and stuff, right? But just to illustrate where I started, when we launched Sticks Golf, Gabe was like, all right, Colin, I want you to take over supply chain. So I'm like, all right, I'll do it. And I went to my computer and I'm like, Google, what is supply chain? So that's where I started, right? And then over months and now years, as silly as it sounds, I don't have a master's in business, right? I didn't go to school for that. I Googled stuff and we figured it out. And now we move hundreds of thousands of units all over the world because this is exactly what you were talking about. My education, irrespective of the industry or where I was headed, taught me how to learn. And so, we've figured it out. And so there is this like scrappiness and adaptability. I think that if you have that, don't let the credentials and the education and the so-called like the LinkedIn resume, don't let that hold you back, because we bootstrapped it and it worked, And I think in addition to that, in terms of encouragement for entrepreneurs, solve a real problem. It sounds funny when talking about golf clubs, like what problem are you actually solving? But our research has turned out that people really love golf, but the vast majority of golfers are intimidated, and so they never step out onto the course. The purchasing process is incredibly complicated. The price tag is incredibly complicated. The culture is complicated. And so what holds people back from actually really enjoying it is like, I'm just intimidated. I need something to help give me confidence. And I don't want to pretend that we're more virtuous than we are, but we created a product and a buying process and a brand language that said, like, let all that go, buy this, and just like take it easy and enjoy the sport. And that, I think, really helped entrench us in the minds of a lot of golfers of like, wait a second, it's okay just to love the game and not worry about my handicap. And it's very similar with Host Modern in the sense that we are creating a product and we are selling a vision for something, but Gabe's got 4 kids, I have 4 kids. We host a ton. Our friends have babies and we travel and we bring them food and meals.
Explain what Host Modern is for those that haven't.
Easiest way to explain Host Modern, it's a Yeti for food. You got coffee in a tumbler, it stays warm for hours. Why doesn't that exist for food, right? If you cook a meal, and Gabe's kids are about 10 years older than mine. They wake up at different times, or they have sporting events, or I've got a 4-year-old up through 8-year-olds. They're doing their own thing for a little bit. How do I deliver a hot meal to everybody at the same time? And so tumblers do it. Like everybody's Yeti tumbler keeps their coffee warm for 6 hours. And so we were like, can we take that tech? It's double wall stainless steel vacuum seal technology, which is ubiquitous now. And can we apply it to a form factor that allows people to cook food, store it, and keep it warm above 140 degrees for an extended period of time? It took us about 8 versions because the form factor is really difficult to do. It's why it didn't exist in the market. But we found the supplier that produces 25 million tumblers for Stanley every year. And we were like, we want to work with you. And they said, okay, we like this idea. And then we were able, over about 6 months, to develop the product and take it to market. And last year we sold about 50,000 of them. Just in terms of size for our first year. So we're trying to reduce friction on the hosting side because hosting is important to us individually. So going back, it's a little long-winded, but I think it's appropriate on the entrepreneurial side. I think really try to reduce friction, solve a problem, do something that is going to matter to people, and then the product validation, it just happens. People will get it.
Yeah. And I think if you think about it, it's golf clubs and it's a warming dish, right? I mean, it's a better mousetrap. Those things kind of existed in a certain form, but you figured out a way to make it better, and more useful and more beautiful. What these guys do really well is on the design side. Their aesthetic is very, very nice, very modern. So they hit something that's pretty neat. But Colin, I want just come back to you real quick. I think you're selling yourself short. Maybe tell us a little bit about your theological understanding, faith and work interests, how did that extend into building company culture? Or maybe, Gabe, you tell the story you told during our podcast of the new hire that worked through his slide deck.
Yeah, culture was a big deal from the beginning for us. We said we want to build a people-first organization. Like, we care about people. People matter. We want this to be the best job that people have ever had. And so we built kind of this philosophy, and Colin had this onboarding culture deck that he would take people through. And one of our favorite employees of all time that we onboarded through that, she was our head of finance for a few years. She was instrumental in the company. But she told us once, looking back, she's like, when I got to this company and I got onboarded through that deck, she was like, I wanted to cry. Like, I've never been to a company that like puts this much intentionality into like the culture they want to create and like how they care about people. She's like, I'm a finance person and this blew my mind. So I'll let him talk about that.
Yeah. It's all true. I'll say that. I think there's been, you can put stuff on a deck and it's intentional and it's meaningful and it's real, and then the rubber hits the road and you work with really difficult people sometimes and it's like, oh, this is hard. So what it comes down to is I think as Christians, there are some fundamental assumptions that we all hold about the dignity of the person. And that what I was explaining, and I've explained several times, is that there is a real tension in the business place because you don't want the relationship to be purely transactional. That is like, I'm going to treat you away only so long as you deliver a particular end to me. Like, I'm going to treat you well when you do well. I'm going to treat you poorly when, like, it can't be purely transactional because people aren't a means to an end. And I think that's a fundamentally Christian conviction. So there is this like element in which we recognize the dignity and really want that individual to flourish, however you might define that. Taking care of clear material needs. The person needs to be able to pay bills. Ideally, they're not stressed out of their mind and on food stamps. And so there is this like, I want to take care of you because I recognize that you are created in God's image. You are a person with dreams and desires and a family in front of me. The tension is, but you also need to do your job. And I think that remains, I'm not sure that's a tension that can be easily solved because you don't ever want to mix metaphors between employees as family, where you are committed to them in a loving way that makes sense in that context.
Category error.
Yeah, versus employees like a team. Like I was telling Dan, I'm a soccer player, so you're starting 11, there's people on the bench, and there's people who didn't make the cut. And so I think I created that deck, that culture deck, which talked about human flourishing in a way. And she hadn't, because she comes from the corporate world, she had never been spoken to like that. And I think that was deeply meaningful. And we meant it, and we tried. And she was with us for years, and her transition out was great. But there is a tension there when you own a business between, I want to take care of you, but you are an employee and you actually have to do your job. Otherwise we need to find someone else. And I think that is a perpetual tension you feel, the care of the person and the need to accomplish business goals when they come into conflict.
I'm going to ask one more question. The reason I'm standing up is because I had knee surgery right before Christmas, and these chairs were the worst. So I stood up, but we're going to give you a chance to stand up in just 1 minute. There's a microphone right here to my right. And we're going to give you, one thing Acton wants to do is give you access to our speakers. So we're going to have a full 30 minutes of Q&A on your end. So if there's a question for Colin or Gabe that you have, feel free to start a queue. Go ahead and start right now. And we'll try to get through as many questions as possible. Make sure the questions are actually questions so that we can get through as many as possible rather than statements on your own. But please go ahead and queue up against this mic so we can capture it for the recording. But Gabe, I just want to, before we turn it over to the audience for more questions, tell me a little bit about the term serial entrepreneur. And do you think that can be taught? And do you think, it's just who you are, it seems? Like who influences you in your life right now to think that way? Or is it just does it fully come out of just how you are built?
It's a good question. I mean, I think I said earlier, it becomes addicting, and I think that's what makes it serial. No, nobody influences me to do this. It's not really in many people's best interest that I do this, right? Like, it's generally more stress on my family. For the people that I work with, it's not in their best interest that I keep starting more things. They would like me to focus on the things that I've already started. I think it's a core, I talk about, I wish more employees sometimes had a lower pain tolerance, right?
What do you mean? What do you mean by that?
That they, like, sometimes we have some very hardworking, great people that put up with a horrible process indefinitely. And I'm like, please solve your own problem. Please hate the pain that you have to live with every day. And I'm that way. I'm like, if I have to deal with a crappy process once, I'm like, yeah, we're fixing that. Because I can't do that. I don't.
Is that feedback loops, or how do you, or do you want them to fix it on their own? What does that look like?
I would love for more people to be like, I can't keep doing this, so I'm going to make it better. Story, I don't know, 2 or 3 years ago, when we finally got our own warehouse, and we hired a guy. We went through a couple people that were like, look, we don't know how to run warehouses, so let's hire somebody who knows how to run a warehouse. So we hire a guy, and we're like, hey, these are your 4 walls. build the system, right? Like, build a warehouse. You have experience with this? We don't. Go crazy. A year later, not a single shelf. Boxes on the floor, pallets stacked up, terrible, like no process, no system. And I'm like, maybe kudos to you to like keep coming to work and like bearing this pain, but man, I couldn't live like that. So I think the entrepreneurial bug is like, I have a very hard time dealing with the bad. So like me, I go shopping for golf clubs and I'm like, this is so broken, I have to fix it, right? Or like I'm this story with Host Modern is I got 4 kids. They were at ages where they were in 3 different schools with 3 different start times over a 90-minute period. And I could either make breakfast once and the first kid got hot food and the others got cold, or I could make breakfast 3 different times. All the while I'm drinking my coffee out of my Yeti that's hot until lunch. I was like, why don't we have this for this? And I had to solve my own problem. So I think it is just kind of core and native. Whether that always translates to entrepreneurship, like sometimes that just means you're just going to make refinements in your life, in your job, in your own process. But sometimes it just becomes bigger than that. And you're like, I got to fix this for me. And if I can solve that for other people too, and that's interesting, then it's fun to build a business.
I just love the story about a pain point about breakfast led to you selling 50,000 units in your first year. So I just love that. All right, anybody ready for questions? Any question? Yes, sir.
Me too. Colin, I'm a huge fan of non-determinism. To what extent did your name influence your decision to join a golf league? And then second, maybe more importantly, I'm a believer that terminally experience is the last differentiator. In a world where most goods are commoditized, right? I can buy golf clubs very cheaply. How do you think about building a moat?
Building a moat. Well, I love the comment about nominative determinism. That's funny. So if I understand it correctly, I see moat come up more and more often, which is basically like some product differentiation that secures you from the encroachment of competitors, right? It's funny. I don't know if it's funny, but what we do at Styx is in an industry that prides itself upon technological innovation every single year, promising you several yards more and more speed and more tech. We really took the opposite approach, where we said that's garbage. Most of that's garbage, or it's appropriate to about 5% of golfers worldwide.
It's just exaggerated.
Yeah, it is very much so.
1% improvement is sold as revolutionary
for sure
every year.
And it's new terminology, and don't get me wrong, they have huge R&D budgets and engineers and actually really smart people doing this. But the material benefit to the golfer is so minimal because most golfers don't play enough and don't take lessons that it actually has very little impact. So it's funny, the moat, which might be traditionally seen in the golf industry as some proprietary technology, is actually the value prop that none of that matters, because what the OEMs, TaylorMade, Callaway, Titleist, what they can't do is come out with a set where they say none of this matters, because it's contrary to their fundamental value prop, which is this is the only thing that matters. And so if I understand your question correctly, with at least Styx, there's nothing on the technological side that we've developed that protects us from like a patent infringement. But what we have done is we have created an aesthetic and a shopping experience and a brand persona that calls into question the very fundamental proposition that basically keeps the whole industry moving every year, which they will never... the OEMs will never counter. And so it protects us. And this is something we heard from VCs in the early day, that we had a really long runway before the OEMs would respond because it's contrary to their fundamental value prop. And so I think that ensures that we will continue to scale the business for the indefinite future. I mean, there has been a couple of direct-to-consumer competitors that have popped up in the last year or two. But in terms of scale and digital presence, it is not wrong to say that we now own this middle market space. When people think of premium sets, Styx is the name that comes up.
That's good. And you're 7 years in. And so you have partnerships like with Jack Nicklaus and these others. People are seeing the value of your brand, right? How has that developed over time?
Yeah, I mean, the investors in the Series A kind of recognize, like, this is a brand play. Like, this isn't a technology play. There's not a lot of defensibility from a moat standpoint. But, you know, what's funny is that golf has one of the highest number of patents of many industries, yet we entered the market no problem, right? So, like, from a moat perspective, even if we did have a bunch of patented technology, who's that really stopping? Because we came right in. You know, similar thing, you look at Yeti and Stanley and you know, double wall stainless steel vacuum sealed insulation. That's now essentially commodity technology that people are building brands around. So early on, like, critical mass is to some extent a moat, right? We went speed to scale. We probably diluted more than we wanted to raise enough money to kind of own this space. So speed to scale, and by focusing on sets, is a big differentiator for us that I think gives us reasonable defensibility for a while.
All right, is there any other questions out here? I got plenty to go, but anybody else with a question?
So how do you guys navigate the family dynamic?
Sorry.
Sounds like you like to go move fast and ultimately, but when you get the itch to start looking at other opportunity, I have the sense that you like to be a little more technical over the operational side. So how do you navigate chasing things and also staying as a family?
I don't know how many people could hear him. I think the question is, how do you navigate essentially work-life balance, building companies and having 4 kids? And I think you said, hey, new opportunity comes up, you want to do more. How do you kind of...
Yeah, navigating the aggressive growth while maintaining family at its core, but that dynamic between the two of you, because it can't always be rosy.
Yeah. I have never, let's see, since 2020 when we started this, I have rarely worked more than a 40-hour week. Back in the software days, I'd put in the occasional 60-hour week if we had a big push. But what I've found throughout my career is most people who put in a lot of hours just get less and less effective over time. So to me, it's all about focus and efficiency. And, you know, me running a second, who was it that asked us recently, like, man, you guys must be going crazy running these 2 companies. And we're like, And they're like, what? You work like 60, 80-hour weeks? And we're like, It's like, what, 60? 40? And we're like, well, if it's a rough week, maybe 40. So, like, I think if you can build things correctly, if you can identify your strengths, focus on your strengths, do what you do best, surround yourself with the right team, build businesses in a way that they make enough money and margin to pay the right people, to do the right things. I think it only gets crazy when something's broken, I guess I would say, right? Like, if I'm more stressed at home because of what's going on with work, which inevitably is maybe the case. I don't even remember what did I read somewhere? Somebody's like, you should just get a consulting job where you just work whatever hours and clock out. And somebody else had commented, like, what consulting job is even like no stress? What 9 to 5 is no stress that you don't bring it home? Like, at least when you run your own company, like, you've got control over more variables. So I don't know. I think there's certainly ways with entrepreneurship and even serial entrepreneurship and running multiple things to actually maintain a balance. And you'll hear people online be like, there is no balance in entrepreneurship. It's like, it's integration. It's that, like, work and life are the same thing, and your family is a part of your business, and your business is part of your family, which can be true, but I think it comes down to focusing on your strengths and building in efficiencies and not believing that, like, burning yourself out is in anybody's best interest. Short-term or long-term.
I do think there's an element to what we've built that is very systematized and replicable and delegatable, if that's a word, able to be delegated. And so that helps a lot. like, so Gabe and I aren't on the phone cold calling people 40 hours, like just to make sales. We are digitally native platforms. And so Meta and Google do a ton of legwork in terms of brand exposure. And we optimize our website to maximize conversions. So even while we sleep, sales are being made because of just the realm that we're in. So, you talked about the difference in your software development days, that there are occasions in which you grind. We have built 2 businesses in which we have delegated some of those responsibilities, but the grinding days are long behind us. And I think our goal was never to sacrifice family for the sake of some business end, some like nebulous, like professional accomplishment. Like I've told, I know Dan 17 years now. Like I've always wanted to be a husband, always wanted to be a dad, and that is priority number 1. And by God's grace, these businesses and the success we've experienced have actually allowed us to spend more time, stress-free time, with the people that mean the most to us. And so that is, if there's one takeaway, it is like, you want to talk about like the glory of owning your own business, it is that. Yeah, you can maximize income, but in terms of setting priorities that are like legacy, like live beyond you, we are freed up to spend time with our families. And I think that is incalculably valuable. As far as the family dynamic, which I'll just address, if I could recommend a book, it's funny, I'm going to butcher the title now. I think it's just called Conflicted.
Yeah, that's right.
One of the things that we established in the early days, we had known each other 16 years. He married my sister, and we went to church together, and I lived with them for a period of time before I went to my undergrad. And so we've been friends for a long time. That helps tremendously. But we also practice having hard conversations with each other earlier than we want to have them. We've just found that the longer you delay hey, I don't like that you're doing this, or I don't love how you communicated that, or there's been a couple of times where you've been like, you dropped the ball. There's been a couple of times for him where I'm like, I can't have you communicate with me that way. Some people, they don't have that's way too uncomfortable. And I think in instances like that where your personality is such that you can't have conflict, it's going to be hard to have a partner, especially a family member who's a business partner. But thankfully, we developed those habits early on, habits of communication and openness and transparency, that it's not world-ending for us to just be like, I didn't like that. We need a new way of communicating, a new way of accountability, a new way of challenging each other. And I think that has paid dividends now in year 6 of a business partnership. It just so happens that our families too happen to be basically best friends. I think there's just been this weaving that has been really awesome, and very, very thankful for that. But it's taken work, it's taken real work.
Gabe, you've 3 or 4 very successful businesses. Does everything you touch turn to gold?
Maybe we're only talking about the successful ones. No, absolutely not. I'm trying to think of a good failure to share now. Help me. Colin likes to point out my failures.
Yeah. That's one of those things that improves our relationship. No, I think at a macro level, we've never really gone into a new business venture without some strong product market fit, product validation. So there's been no big fails where we've invested capital and time and all that stuff.
I think what's we're big on validation, right? Don't keep going if it's not catching.
Like the sunk cost fallacy we talk about all the time. Well, we've put $30,000 into it. We just cut our time. We've gotten good at being like, as hard as it is to admit, that was a huge fail. We just lost $100,000 on that influencer strategy. And then we move on.
Yeah. So, sorry to disappoint. It's not all gold.
So, as someone who's young and going into the workforce, but is centered around Christ, I know Colin talked a lot about this, and you've talked a lot about your faith throughout this, but both of you feel free to chime in. How do you put God first when going about just doing your work? Because I believe it goes beyond just business to other areas, healthcare, education, things like that. So how do you put God first in your area of work, and how would you suggest someone young like me and other students here to do that?
Yeah, it's a good question. This is something that I've vacillated on quite a bit, because there is coming out of the faith and work space, and I don't want to be too critical, there's an element to it that I fundamentally, wholeheartedly agree with it, but there are times where the intent to integrate feels foreign. So like this is the joke, like when I'm reviewing Pantone polyester swatches for the new golf bag, my thought process is like, how do I do this to the glory of God? Not that that's not good, but it's just like, it's almost like a category area. And I know some people that do want to, could I make a theological argument that color? Sure, but that feels foreign to me, that feels forced. I also don't want to, what's the word? I don't want to treat being a Christian business owner like it's just a matter of ethics. Yeah. Like I'm just going to do is that important? Absolutely. Did I have a chance to lie about where I was importing goods from in Southeast Asia in order to avoid 135% tariff? It cost me $120,000. Did I have the opportunity to lie there? Yeah. Did I? No. A, because I'm accountable to Christ. B, I didn't want to go to prison, which I think are appropriate incentives, right? Or get in trouble. But we're faced with temptations like that all the time. Yeah. But being a Christian business owner is not also just a matter of ethics. And so I do think I vacillate in terms of my own spiritual struggle with how to integrate the two, between trusting that God is for me in Christ Jesus, which is like, for anybody that knows Karl Barth, it's a Barthian phrase. That is true. He's for me. So there is this providential hand of God's goodness and grace on my life and on Gabe's life and our families, that it's okay for us to put the hand to the plow and just focus on doing good work, right? So I don't want to over-spiritualize it. I also don't want to neglect the fact that we face real ethical decisions and challenges all the time. And so I do think for me in my own mind, there is this swirl of fundamental bedrock assumptions about God's goodness in our life and super abundance, that he has blessed us more than we ever thought or imagined. And then there are times where when I'm answering emails about sales tax, I'm just answering emails about sales tax, And so some people are really uncomfortable with that dialect of the back and forth, and that is okay. I think I have grown to be more comfortable with this massive tension between my love of business and just pure execution. And like, when I say success, I mean like we're selling product at a scale and it's incredibly exciting because we're buying it, delivering it, selling it well. That's awesome. And then I go home and I read theology, and that makes my heart sing. And there is forever this tension between those two things. And so I feel like I'm rambling a little bit, but there is this dance, this dynamic, this dialectic between the two, where I don't know what it means to be a business owner and not a Christian. I think Lewis has some quote about like Christian writing, Christian literature, where we need less Christian literature, we need more Christians doing, again, what a butchered quote, but I think it's a fundamental extension of the same argument. I am thoroughly a Christian, and so every aspect of my business practice, so long it is honoring to the Lord, is Christian, So hopefully that answers your question.
And I do think it comes out like the culture deck, right? Like
very clear.
I mean, if the core of who we are comes forward and how we want to treat people and how we want to conduct business and whatever, it feels like it's another playing field where you're going to have situations that you face that you feel like, man, I gotta go pray about this because I'm feeling conflicted, or you're just stressed out, and you gotta, that's going to challenge your faith and how you deal with your family when you get home.
For sure.
And I think there's natural integrations on that side, and you can start a business that has kind of faith outcomes, and that could be another piece of it. But yeah, it seems like the integration, I like what you said, it doesn't need to be forced.
And I just want to share a brief thing along that line as well. This year is a big year for me. I turned 50. my 25th wedding anniversary.
Congratulations.
Thanks. My 10th year at Acton. So those are, and I'm a community leader as well. And so there's 4 spheres of which my life has kind of milestones this year. And I think that Psalm 90, the idea of praying for good work for my hands to do, that's my translation of it, but that endurance, that we may endure in our work. And I think I don't pray over every morning. Like he said, emails. When I come into work, we got a bunch of emails. We're doing programming all over the world, all kinds of things. I don't pray over every individual email, but my prayer for the day is, Lord, continue to give me good work for my hands to do, and for me to be aware of the needs around me. And there are some basic prayers or methods that, for my own life, I try to, in my business, do good work, be ethical, like you're saying, but commit my work to God. And it doesn't have to be hyper spiritual sometimes. And I think maybe that's the tension that Colin is getting at. But great question.
Thank you guys. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Go ahead next.
I want to thank you guys both for coming out. In the program, it says that you founded Host Modern off of Kickstarter. Could you go a little bit more into detail on the sort of struggles and sort of trials of using Kickstarter? Because I think a lot of people know a lot of stories about Kickstarters not panning out. So what do you guys think? What did you guys do specifically to make your Kickstarter so successful?
Great question. Yeah, we talked about this earlier. Kickstarter was a thing that we kind of wanted to do so that we had that experience, understood what that was about. With Stix, we raised money really fast. We diluted the company really fast. We gave a lot of our ownership stake away. So we were like, let's experiment with this crowdsourcing, which I don't know how much everybody knows about Kickstarter. I think we actually thought up front, like, this was an equity play, like you sell some equity on Kickstarter. Not the case. It's essentially a pre-order engine. And what's good about Kickstarter is it provides credibility because it shows the sales amount. So like as the thing grows, people are like, oh, wow, these guys have met goal, they've exceeded goal, they can see the dollar amount, they can see how many people are behind it, which they can't see on your site. Yeah. So with Stix and Host Modern, we actually tried to turn on pre-orders super early on, right? We did some validation testing. We thought we had really good product market fit based on feedback and email signups and whatever. But people don't like to be the first ones to pre-order on a site where they have no idea. There's no ratings, there's no reviews. I have no idea, like there's no press about this product. So I have no idea if I'm the only person who's ever bought this thing. So Kickstarter is great for that. We tried a lot of things on Kickstarter. Some were good, some were not. The things I would stay away from is probably all the marketing companies that reach out to you as soon as you have a Kickstarter, claiming that they'll make it all happen for you magically. Essentially, they were all worthless, and I wouldn't work with any of them again. I wouldn't, if I could go back, I wouldn't have signed up with any of them. We did work with the founder of Nomadic, who's run a lot of Kickstarters, and just did like a couple of consultation calls about like the types of things to put on the page, smart things about
like early bird pricing and how to structure that was really important.
Yeah, and like this one's a little gimmicky, but like it's super important to have a low item count left, right? So there's actually software that will do it, but he recommended like you want to stay between 3 and 10 items left the whole time and just go in there and keep changing the number. Seems gimmicky, seemed to work, but I think what works about Kickstarter is you have to treat it like you would treat your own website when it's live. Like use Kickstarter as a way to prove that you can actually drive sales yourself. The most effective thing for us was just driving meta ads to the Kickstarter page. So you build your own creatives, you build your own campaigns, you drive them to the Kickstarter page. It has a meta pixel on it, so it knows when there's a sale, and the algo learns. That was by far the most effective thing. I wouldn't even bother building an email list. That was a waste. I think we spent thousands on email lists that converted not good. So I think the two things that worked really well for us were literally send out personalized text messages to everyone you know, to drive those initial sales. Because again, getting those first people to sign up. So when other people go, they see, oh, there's already 100 people that have done this. I think we got 70 from our personal text messages, emails, just direct outreach, friends, family, buy them yourself, whatever, right? Like get some momentum, then run the ads and let the ads run. Don't mess with it too much, right? You got 30 days for your Kickstarter to run, and the algo takes a while to learn. So once it gets going, don't touch it. You start higher, lower, let me launch some new ad sets, let me change some copy. It takes it like a week to learn, so you don't really have time to mess with it too much. Anything else?
The thought too was one of the takeaways from Sticks is we want to really never raise capital again, and we never want to have an external board again. That has had some blessings and it's had some not. And so we were like, we did raise some money with some angel investors that we knew that are awesome. 5 different people.
Was that before Kickstarter?
That was before Kickstarter, yeah.
Because that isn't it. You need money to fund driving ads to Kickstarter, yeah.
So Kickstarter also was, where a lot of Kickstarter was also a part of our personal professional development, which I think is an interesting way to think about anybody else in your own entrepreneurial journey, doing things that you don't necessarily have to do, but to know how it works. So the only other additional context I'd provide is like we had some capital, so we didn't have to do the Kickstarter, but we thought, let's do it. Let's do some, product market fit here. Let's look at how successful our ad creatives are in terms of driving traffic and that traffic converting. And then the margins aren't super healthy, but it's going to drive some additional cash into the business.
Well, I think the other big one was when we tried to launch pre-orders on our website, nothing.
Yeah.
Post Kickstarter.
Yep.
We put the Kickstarter results on the website. And now we're converting on the website.
That was enough to overcome. We call them objection handlers. A lot of times it's like, well, who are you? Yeah. And so even a badge, we ended up getting a Kickstarter Projects We Love badge because of the speed with which we hit our goal. We slapped that on our product page on our website, and then we started seeing conversion. So we wanted to know what it was like to run a Kickstarter so that we could have this conversation right now, and for people who are curious about it, the wins and fails, and we could take that personal knowledge and then help other founders who are interested in it, the do's and the don'ts. And but we were at least in the privileged position to have raised, I think we raised $250K from angel investors, and then run the Kickstarter just as a, let's see how this goes.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
All right, so we're going to wrap it up here. My last question to you, if you keep it brief, but kind of what's next? What's exciting you for the next step, next phase? Without proprietary information, what are there companies you're looking at starting? What are you thinking is around the corner?
Yeah, I mean, we want to get better at launching companies and running companies very efficiently. So Sticks, at our peak, we had 35 employees. We're now down to 10, doing 3 times the revenue we were doing when we had 35 employees. At Host Modern, we're 2.5 employees, both of us working 10-ish hours a week on the project. It did $4.5 million last year in its first year of sales. So we want to get better at having an idea, experiencing our own problem or somebody else's problem, and saying, let's build a product, let's solve that problem, take it to market, run it efficiently. So we're looking for more opportunities to build products ourselves. We're looking to diversify a little bit away from the physical products. Physical products are great. We're good at that, but there's some challenges with it. Like you got to pay for inventory before you can sell it. You got to ship it. It's got to go. It's got tariffs, all these things. So we're looking at some software plays, some digital product plays. We're also getting interested in starting to document some of our story and build a little bit of a personal brand of content and online courses, potentially a book someday. So more products, more businesses, more diversification, and potentially some consulting, because we love talking to early stage entrepreneurs. I asked Colin, because he's a little bit shy when it comes to doing online content, and he's like I don't want to have imposter syndrome, and I don't want to be a guru, and I don't like talking like I know it all. And I was like, dude, if you 5 years ago could talk to you today, would you take that phone call? And he's like, okay, I get it.
Would have saved us a lot of money. I don't know anybody that has listened to it, but you interviewed Brad Beshore recently with Permanent Equity, and I sent that to Gabe, and there was something really inspiring about his approach. Not that I would replicate it, but Gabe and I have often talked about what would it look like either through launching or acquisition to have a portfolio of businesses, to keep those businesses, grow those businesses at an appropriate scale, take care of the employees that would, be there through acquisition, or, that you hire a general manager to oversee a brand or something, and to build that kind of portfolio. I think I felt inspired by that. I liked his attitude and his conviction about it. And I don't know that's exactly what we're going to do, but we've got two durable good businesses between Postmodern and Stix. I've got my food and bev coffee business. He's got his other software play that kind of sits outside the portfolio because there's other equity partners on those cap tables. But the digital and software play, and then I've got a consumables play in the future that I'm excited about. That we've gotten about 60 to 70% of the way there. Vetted some suppliers, and that's going to happen maybe at some point here. But diversity of industries, physical goods, non-physical goods, so that we could come out and have these conversations and say, hey, we did these things, and here's how we might be able to help. I think that sounds exciting.
Please thank Colin and Gabe.